Here in Studio One, I'm working on a vocal track. Have a quick listen.
I know that it's impossible for a mortal soul like me to cross whatever separates, to cross what we can see.
So what you're hearing there is one continuous performance by a female vocalist, except it wasn't. Just before I hit record here with the camera, I actually used the bounce feature in Studio One to join a whole bunch of audio clips together. Let me undo that so you can see what I had. Now this reveals to you with these different colors that this performance was actually from 3 different takes. You can see a couple here, one here in light blue, another one here in light blue, a yellow one, and one in dark blue. Now, if we go over to the left-hand side and click on this tiny little icon that you can hardly see here, I'll just click on that and then scroll up a little bit. We can see that there was actually 4 recordings recorded initially, and I made selections from 3 of them, and it sort of sounded in the end like it was one continuous performance. This is awesome because you can choose the best parts of a number of different performances. And I'm not just talking about things that are in tune or singing the right lyrics. It could be little inflections in the voice. It could be little bits of emotion, which are there in some takes and not in others. It's a really awesome way of getting the best you can out of a vocalist, guitarist, or what have you. And it's called comping. Hi folks, I'm Mike, and I hope you're well. I've been watching some other awesome Studio One YouTubers, and I've noticed that sometimes they deal with vocal comping in a very different way to me. So I thought I'd share you my workflow, the way I've been doing it for some years, but I have borrowed a couple of their ideas to come up with the best hybrid solution that I could. Now there's 2 basic steps involved here. One is at the recording stage when we actually create different layers to work with, and the other one is when we actually audition or listen to the various takes and then choose the ones that we want to keep for the final performance. Let's start off by creating some layers. So normally I know in advance that I'm going to be using vocal comping. So I set Studio One up in such a way that it will automatically create the layers that I'm going to need later on as I'm auditioning my takes. Now it may be that you want to do some comping on an existing project where you already recorded different takes, but perhaps to different tracks, okay? So later on I'm going to be showing you how you can convert those different tracks into layers. However, let's go for the ideal situation first of all. I already know I'm going to be I'm going to be using vocal comping. So what I like to do is go down to the bottom of the screen and look for this tiny little cog icon here. I'll click on that. That opens up this sort of recording options panel. And the only thing you need to make sure of is that this selection is made. You can see it selected in blue here. It says takes to layers. It does exactly what it says. As you record each take, it's going to create a layer for that take. Super simple. Now I'm going to do something here which is probably ill-advised. I'm going to record some vocals right now here in front of you. So I do apologize for that in advance. This is just the sacrifice I make for you so that you'll enjoy my videos and hopefully you'll subscribe. Thank you so much for that. So let's record our first take. All I have to do is make sure my track is armed for recording and hit the record button. You've taken my heart and you give it up. I'm trying to figure out how to fill your cup. Oh, that's what we do. Okay, let's stop there. As you can see, what normally happens is we just record some audio and it appears here in that track. However, we've got a second sort of track here which has appeared. This is the layer that's been created, and you can see that it took the name of the track, which was vocals, and it added or appended to that name here take 1. Okay, so that's our first take. The only thing we have to do to record our second take is hit record. Let's do that now. You've taken my heart and you give it up. I'm trying to figure out how to fill your cup. Oh, that's what we do. Now you will have noticed there that thankfully I couldn't hear my first recording, okay? So it sort of mutes the original recording so you can just hear what you're doing. So I've got 2 takes now. For good luck and good measure, let's record our 3rd take. You've taken my heart and you give it up. I'm trying to figure out how to fill your cup. Oh, that's what we do. Now I want you to notice here that Studio One automatically promotes our last recording as the main recording. What do I mean by that? We can see 4 waveforms here. The top one is our main sort of track here, the one that we normally see. Let's hide those takes so we can see that in its sort of normal state. Yeah, that's what we see, that's what we hear. But what that actually is the last take that we recorded. If we expand our layers again, we can see all 3, and there's the last one at the bottom. If you want to promote one whole track so that that's the one that you'll hear, then you can just click on this up arrow here. Okay, so I'll do that for take 2. Click that, and take 2 is now our main recording. Now, of course, we want to actually sort of chop this up into separate parts and choose our favorite phrases, but we can choose whole takes like this if we wish. And that's the basis, or that's the basic workflow that I normally use to record my separate takes. But as I say, what if you didn't know you were going to do this and you've already recorded some different takes, but to different tracks? Let's see how to deal with that now. So I've got this situation where I've got my 3 takes on separate tracks and I want to turn them into layers. Ever so easy to fix this. Just go to the first track. This is called Vocals 1 for me. Right click, okay, then go down to Layers and click on Add Layer. A dialog box will appear so that you can name that layer. I'm just going to go with the default value for that. Click on OK, and you can see here that the waveform which is there has been moved down to this new layer which has been created. Now if we play this track at the moment, it will be silent, okay, because it has moved that down. I'll show you how to fix that in a moment, but let's go ahead and create our other layer. So again, I'm going to right click on my track, go down to Layers, and then click on Add Layer like so. Click on OK, and now we have this empty layer. All we have to do now is select the clip here from our second track with vocals on it. Just grab it and then just drag it up to that layer. Okay, so now we have 2 layers to work with in 1 track at the top here. We can go ahead and actually delete that track now by pressing Shift T while we've got it selected. Okay, so we just need to do the same thing for the 3rd take. I'll just show you a different way to create layers. So if you have your track selected like so, and you have the inspector open, which I do here, if you don't have the inspector open, just click on the eye icon, yeah, or press F4 on your keyboard to toggle it. If you've got it open, you'll see there's just a little section here called Layers. You can go to the drop down there and then click on Add Layer. Just a different way of doing the same thing. I'll click on OK to accept the name there. It's created my 3rd layer. And again, I'll just go ahead and grab the waveform or the clip there and just drag it up into that layer. So I've got my 3 takes now. I can go ahead again and delete that 3rd one. So I've got the situation I want now where I've got my different layers, but it is silent at the moment. Let's just play this track. There's none of these layers have actually been promoted. Now I know I told you earlier that you promote layers all to the top, a whole layer to the top, by clicking on this up sort of icon here. But on this occasion, I don't want you to do that because it will sort of make the waveform disappear from the layer. Just on this occasion, what I want you to do is just select or highlight one of these. I'll use the first one here and just drag out across it like so. When you release, it will be promoted as the layer that we can hear, but it still stays in its layer down below, if that makes sense. Now you can go ahead and use that up arrow to select or promote whatever one of these layers that you want to use as your main track. Now, to spare you from having to listen to my vocals anymore, I've gone back to working with those female vocals that I played at the beginning of this video. You can see those here in pink, and you can see the 4 take layers here down below. That's where I'm going to be auditioning the various phrases in this performance. Now, before I select those phrases, which is the first thing I'm going to do, I just want to make sure that snap is turned off, okay? You can do that by going to this icon at the top here and clicking on that to turn it off and on, or you can press N on your keyboard to toggle it that way as well. So I've got snap turned off. Now, rather than select this main sort of waveform, the pink one at the top here, I'm actually going to make selections from one of my layers. It doesn't matter which one, but you will see why in a moment. I'm going to go through and roughly select each of these phrases, okay? So I'm going to go down to my first layer here. I'm just going to drag out an area, which sort of captures that first phrase there. And you can see, because I've done that, it's automatically sort of separated this clip at the top here, okay? That's why I select it down the bottom and not up at the top. So I'll go ahead and select some more phrases like so. You can do it pretty quickly. I don't think you have to be too precise because you can adjust the selection later if you want to. You can see right away that I've got these separate little clips at the top here. I'll just do it for those 4 phrases, but if you are working with the whole song, honestly, once you get into the swing of this, you'll do it in no time at all. Now, the next thing I want to do is actually audition or hear the different takes, okay, for each of these clips. But there's a couple settings I want to make sure of before I do that. Down at the bottom where we can see our loop icon, just right click there and make sure loop follows selection is selected, okay? And then I will actually turn loop on, okay? This means that as I click on one of these clips at the top there, it's going to create a loop, based on that selection. Now, the other thing I want to make sure of, if we go up to the top here, is to make sure this icon's selected, and it is at the moment. This makes sure that the cursor follows the edit position. What does that mean? It means as I make a selection, not only is that loop created, but the playhead goes to the beginning of that loop. So I'm ready all the time when I've clicked on a selection to listen to it, to play it right away, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the first phrase here, and I'm going to audition it, and then I'm going to listen to the different takes. Now there's 3 different ways I know of to do this. The first one I'm going to show you is one that a lot of other people use and I don't, but I think it's important that you know this is to use a keyboard shortcut to listen to each of the takes, okay? The keyboard or the default keyboard shortcut is holding down the Alt key, pressing G or H to go forward or backwards through the selection, okay? So I'm pressing H to go forward, G to go backwards. You can see the colors are changing as I select a different take. And if I was playing, I'll press space on my keyboard to play. I can hear each of those takes.
I know that it's impossible. I know that it's impossible. I know that it's impossible. I know that it's impossible.
And I promise you, they were not completely different. They were different takes, okay? Susie's a very consistent singer, which is why they sounded very, very similar. But yeah, that's how you can cycle through them using the keyboard shortcut. I don't like that keyboard shortcut, Alt-G, Alt-H. Hard for me to remember. If you want to change it, you can go up to Studio One at the top, go to keyboard shortcuts, and in the search box here, type in the word replace, okay? And you will see there those 2 actions. You can go ahead and assign whatever keyboard shortcut you think is suitable for you. Now, what I like to do, or one of the things I've done for a long time actually, is just use my mouse. It's really easy to do. You can just hover over any of the layers that you want to listen to and double click within that area, just double click, and it changes that selection at the top to that layer, okay? So we can just play.
I know that it's impossible. I know that it's impossible. I know that it's impossible.
Now, when you've found the take that you like, then you can just stop and you can see it's already been promoted up to the top. Now, both of these methods have, well, one of them has an advantage. If you're using the keyboard shortcut and you don't have your layers being shown, then you can still select the layers, okay? So look, we can do that, okay? And as I say, if you do have them showing, then obviously you can just double click with your mouse, and that's quite easy. You don't have to remember the keyboard shortcut. However, there is a third way, which is really awesome. If you do have this like so, without the layers being shown, hold Alt on the keyboard, and if you have a scroll wheel on your mouse, which I think most of you will, you can just scroll through the different selections like so as you're playing.
I know that it's impossible. I know that it's impossible. I know that it's impossible.
So I would simply, I'll just show them all again. I would simply be doing that really quickly usually. I find it's best to work on your instinct with this in terms of which one of these is best, okay? So I would be working through pretty quickly, and I would end up like so with a whole bunch of different selections, yeah, for each of those phrases. And when we play them all together, as we heard earlier, it sounds pretty good. Now, if there's some little part of this phrase that you prefer to others, that's fine. You can do that. So if we listen to this part here.
Soul like me.
Yeah, so there's a word soul-like, okay? Say I just like the way she sings soul-like there with one take and not another. That's fine. I can just go in and select that phrase like so, yeah, and I can just, I can just swap, yeah, those out and audition them again.
Soul like, soul like, soul like, soul.
Yeah, sounds a bit weird like that. But yeah, that's one of the things you can do. If it doesn't sort of work out exactly right, if you can sort of hear where that join has happened, just click at the beginning of that selection and zoom in. Now, I'm pressing E on my keyboard to zoom in. You can use W to zoom back out, but E will zoom in. And you can see that where Studio One has made this kind of cut here, it's also done a crossfade, which makes it nice and smooth. You can move that position, just go down to the bottom half, yeah, where it's showing this sort of mouse cursor that's showing at the moment, and then you can just drag that from side to side, yeah, and change the specific edit position. And that, 99.9% of the time, you're going to find you'll get a really seamless selection. So let's do a bit of tidying up now that we've made these selections. Now, I just want to mention in terms of workflow, if I was recording a whole bunch of vocals, harmony vocals, etc., I tend to do the comping with the main vocals before I even record the harmony or backing vocals. The reason for that is just in case there's any specific phrasing with the takes that I end up going with. Of course, when I'm harmonizing or when the other person's harmonizing with the main vocal, they want to try and get that phrasing, similar or the same as the lead vocal. Okay, so that's why I do that particular workflow. It's up to you on that though. Now, everything else I'm going to show you is very, very optional. Okay, but I think most of it is something I do for a reasonably good reason. Let's just get rid of these takes now. And we kind of end up, don't we, with this patchwork that we can see here. What I personally like to do is this. A lot of these are silencers, yeah. I like to just select them and get rid of them, yeah. That's one of the reasons why I did the selections in the way I did earlier, just selecting those phrases. You end up with these really easy to grab and delete sort of, little clips there like so, okay. And look, you don't have to do that. There's really no reason to do that. Probably those silencers are not perceivable, but in a way it may help. It may save you from using a gate or whatever if you normally do that. But anyway, that's just me. I like to do that. The next thing I like to do is I don't really like to have all of these sort of this patchwork here. Now there's there's sort of one reason for this, which is I'm a little bit OCD and I like things to be tidy. But there's another practical reason we'll talk about in a moment. But the way I do that is just to make a selection of these clips up here. Yeah, so I've selected all of the clips and I press Control plus B on my keyboard to bounce them all into one clip. Now, one of the main functional reasons why I do that actually is if I'm using something like Melodyne to do some pitch correction, it's just going to mean that Melodyne is dealing with one clip, okay? Makes the workflow so much more straightforward and simple if you do that. Now, we did a little bit of editing during this process, but if you want to get a better grasp on all of the editing tools in Studio One, and I think you should, I highly recommend you watch this video right here where I did cover all of those tools.